Strangest psychological phenomena. Hey everyone, it's Alexa again. Welcome back to another video. Our brains are the most complex organs in our body. They're made up of billions of nerve cells and neurons, and it helps us reason, function, and think. Sometimes our brain plays tricks on us, and we experience these strange psychological phenomena. Some are nothing to be concerned about, but others are downright scary. Today we have a look at some of the strangest that we can experience as humans. But before we get into today's video, make sure that you're subscribed and ring the bell so that you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The bystander effect. This psychological phenomenon is rare because it doesn't just affect one person, but rather several at the same time. It refers to the unlikeliness of a group of people to assist someone during an emergency. The bigger the group of people, the less chance they will help. A famous case involves the murder of Kenny Genovese, where 38 people witnessed the event and did nothing to help. There have been several case studies done on this phenomenon, and like Edmund Burke said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also known as frequency illusion, and you've no doubt experienced this one too. We've now told you about Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. Now see how many times you notice it being mentioned in your day-to-day life. You might see it in a magazine, in a waiting room, on another video. You'll just seem to notice it all the time. It's not merely a coincidence. You just never noticed the word with the flow of information you had been reading until right now. Halo effect. It's also called the horn effect, and here's why. This phenomenon is one we have all fallen victim to. When someone is considered beautiful, then they are also deemed honest, trustworthy, smart, or funny. If someone is not good looking, they are considered to have other negative traits too, like dishonesty or a lack of confidence. Once you're aware of the phenomenon, you can learn to not let it affect your judgment of someone. Capgras syndrome. During the trial of Clay Shaw, where several people were indicted on charges of murdering JFK, a prosecution witness displayed some unusual behavior on the witness stand. During the cross-examination, the lawyer asked the witness whether he fingerprinted his daughter every time she came back from college, to which the witness replied that he did. When asked why, he said he wanted to ensure that the daughter he sent to college was the same that came back. This is called Capgras syndrome, where one is convinced that imposters have taken the place of the people that they know. It was identified in 1923 by French psychiatrist Joseph Capgras. The Glass Delusion. This psychiatric disorder was already recorded between the 15th and 17th centuries, and those who struggle with this disorder believe that they are made of glass and will shatter. King Charles VI of France endured this condition and wouldn't allow anyone to touch him and wore protective clothing to ensure he didn't crack. It doesn't seem to be as prevalent as other disorders, but it's certainly a strange one. Alice in Wonderland syndrome. It sounds a lot better than what it is, and if you've ever experienced it, then you'll know that it is really scary. Also called Todd syndrome, this makes one's surroundings appear distorted. The sounds you hear will either be much quieter or much louder than usual. Objects appear smaller or larger than what they are, and textures are just not the same. You don't even view your own body as it normally is. This syndrome is rare and usually affects people in their 20s who have a brain tumor or have used narcotics. Placebo effect. It might be the most common psychological phenomenon, and chances are you've experienced it yourself. Those that have participated in a clinical study will have either tried the new drug on the market or taken a placebo, which is a pill that has no physical effect but produces a psychological benefit. A well-known case of placebos occurred when a new antidepressant was introduced. The case was called MK-869, and despite the new drug having great results, those that took the placebo experienced the same benefits. It's said that 50% of new drugs failed during the trial stages because the placebo is considered just as effective. Jamais vu. You've heard of Deja Vu before, which is having a feeling that you've experienced something that you've already done before, although you know you haven't. This is the exact opposite. Good example. You know how to write and spell a certain word, but when you've written the word, it just looks weird to you now. You know that it's spelled correctly, but it just doesn't look right. That is jamais vu, and there is no logical explanation for it. Pygmalion Effect. You might have done this before, or experienced this yourself. The phenomenon is almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If the expectation placed on people is great, the results are usually great. The opposite stands too. If there are poor expectations, then the results are usually poor as well. For example, if you believe that you are going to perform badly on a test, you generally do. If you believe your relationship will fail, it ultimately does. The Fregoli Delusion. This unusual psychological phenomenon has a person believing that different people are all the same person. A man on Facebook fell in love with a woman who didn't love him. He then believed that all his Facebook contacts were this woman, but in disguise. He believed that she was so obsessed with him that she would take all these different forms to try and get closer to him. It's clearly a primate ego defense, but freaky nonetheless. Alien hand syndrome. Used to perfection in horrifying plot twists, this syndrome is as real as you and me. Lucky it's not common, but it can happen. A person going through this will experience a total loss of control of a limb or a hand, and it's as if that limb has a mind of its own. This alien limb is usually destructive and tries to choke or scratch the person it is attached to. To date, there is no cure, and people struggling with this phenomenon have to keep their hands occupied at all times. Online Disinhibition Effect. This is something that we have all witnessed online and probably just sat back with our jaws dropping, thinking, how on earth can that person post that? Online Disinhibition Effect occurs when someone you know, for example, a well-respected and loved teacher from a local school, goes into a complete online rage and says things that are totally inappropriate. Many celebs have seen their careers take a dive when they've gone on shameless online rants, and it's almost as if people forget that they're not anonymous. The Mandela Effect. If you had to ask a few different people how Nelson Mandela died, you will probably hear different replies. One might say he died in prison, another that he died in 2013, while another will say that it's a conspiracy theory and he died years ago, and they pretended he was alive to keep his forgiving nature alive in a struggling South Africa. Everyone having a different memory of what happened to him is called the Mandela Effect. It's when a person recalls something that didn't happen or remembers it differently to how it actually happened. Here's one for you. How do you spell the Berenstain Bears? Overview Effect. Probably the rarest psychological phenomenon is the overview effect, because it's only experienced by an astronaut, and not even all astronauts experience it. When an astronaut views the Earth from orbit in all its entirety, they report a feeling that is so deep and emotional. It's raw, it's confusing, and it's inspiring. Many astronauts come back to Earth with a renewed sense of how humans are all connected, how pointless cultural boundaries are, and how important it is to look after the little of Earth that is left. Ekbom syndrome. Not one you'd ever like to experience. Ekbom syndrome gives you the feeling that your skin is crawling with bugs. A 77-year-old woman went to the doctors complaining about an infestation of bugs underneath and on top of her skin. Obviously, there were no bugs. People who experience this are often seeking medical attention when they should be getting psychological treatment instead. Also called delusional parasitosis, this syndrome can be kept under control with psychological help and medicinal treatment. Philanthropy. This is an uncommon mental disorder whereby people believe they are cows. They believe so firmly in this that you will even find them in a field living with other cows. They walk on all fours and eat the grass and moo just like a cow. They don't realize they're doing it, and researchers believe it's instigated by dreams or hypnotism. King Nebuchadnezzar from the Bible is believed to have suffered with this. Outgroup Homogeneity Effect. Some like to call this a form of racism, but it's anything but. This effect occurs when a person believes that all members of one group look like each other. All members of an outgroup look the same, and members of the in-group are different. So women might believe that all men look and behave alike, whereas women are unique in their own behavior and looks, and vice versa. They are the same, we are different. Spotlight effect. We may be the center of our own world, but we're not the center of anyone else's world. With this psychological phenomenon, we overestimate our importance in the minds of others. We believe that other people notice how we look and behave. It doesn't sound like a massive problem, but for many, it can cause intense social anxiety. They won't leave their homes because they're so worried that others are watching their every move. Folie à deux. A young woman had heard the story of her parents' amazing trip to Florida after they were married, and now they stayed in a hotel with a pink flamingo in the front countless times. When she reached adulthood, she thought it would be a great idea to visit the hotel, but her parents couldn't remember the name of it. So the daughter hauled out old family photos and found exactly what she was looking for. Except the man in the photographs was not her father. So why did her father speak about the trip as if he were there? The condition is called folie à deux, a type of delusion that occurs when one person's memories are transmitted to another person. The second person becomes infected with the same delusion and genuinely believes that they were there. clinical lycanthropy. A lot like boanthropy, which we mentioned earlier, this psychological phenomenon sees sufferers believing they can turn into animals, and more specifically, werewolves. You will find these people hiding in forests or wooded areas, and they'll resist being captured because they genuinely believe they are an animal. L'esprit de l'escalier. We've all had these moments before when you think of a clever or a witty comeback, but it's way too late. It's also called stairway wit, and it's associated with the remark coming so late that the person is already on the stairs leaving the scene. Stairway wit is usually associated with a feeling of regret because you didn't think of that clever comeback when it mattered the most. What are some other strange psychological phenomena that you guys have heard of? Share your stories with us in the comments below. 1. Prosopagnosia. This strange phenomenon occurs when a person is unable to recognize a person or an object that is very familiar to them. They might be able to recognize a smell, a shape, a hairstyle, or posture, but they can't pinpoint how they know that person. An intriguing book was written about this in 1998 called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. If you're an avid reader, this one is worth it.